it seems a bit serving that since English is my natural language, that I want everybody to speak English. There is much more to the story than that, and I will use as a backdrop the study of airplane crashes to demonstrate my point. First of all, when you're talking about languages, you're actually talking about culture as well. The American English has a certain culture, Israeli have a certain culture, and Korea has a certain culture. This all began in the early 90s when Korean Airlines had a series of crashes that could not be explained. Mechanically sound airplanes, capable pilots, they were all having bad outcomes. So naturally, they started to research and isolate all instances to try to figure out what was causing this problem. You would be surprised at the number of mechanical things that can go wrong. You would be even more surprised at the lack of good communication in the cockpit. In the cockpit, you have the pilot, you have the first officer, and you have the flight engineer. And the three of them work best when they work as a team. But what had been happening is they have been prepared to take over the flight in case the pilot was incapacitated. As this study developed, they came across certain parameters that you might find interesting. The one that I found interesting is the power distance index, or PDI. The power distance index describes the degree to which the people without power accept the fact that power is distributed unequally. In countries or environments with low PDI, people don't see their leaders or the person with the status as any better than they. So that in a cockpit, if you're the pilot and you come from a low PDI environment, you're going to try to negate the fact that you're the powerful one. If, on the other hand, you are from a high PDI environment, you are going to be sticking your chest out, letting everybody know that you're the boss. And conversely, if you are not the boss, you are going to expect the boss to make all the boss decisions. And even though you may see something wrong or something amiss, you won't say anything about it because it's not your job. Now, this is not something that you do on purpose. This is something that's ingrained inside of you that's really hard for you to fight, no matter how much you try. In Korea, where this whole study developed, there are 6 levels of communication. You have formal deference, informal deference, and you have blunt. You have familiar, you have intimate, and you have plain. Now, can you imagine in a cockpit having a mixture of nationalities, a mixture of cultures, trying to navigate that environment successfully? In one instance, the pilot was given instructions to the first officer that they are in emergency and they should communicate that to the air traffic controller who's speaking to them. Well, the air traffic controllers, they come from a low PDI environment. They think that they are in charge. In one instance, the first officer was trying to tell the pilot that there was ice on the wings, which was a dangerous situation. But he couldn't come right out and tell the pilot that there was ice on the wings because he comes from a high PDI environment. Now, what happens in a high PDI environment is something that they use called mitigating speech. That's mitigating speech. You, if you're not the pilot, you can't just come right out and tell the pilot that he's doing something wrong or that he's doing something stupid, because you would be out of place, no matter how much you knew or how much you didn't know. These planes went down, these planes crashed, these people died because they couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't just come out and say things, because in the cockpit, if everybody doesn't play their part, if everybody doesn't report what they see, if everybody doesn't say what needs to be said, then people die. How did I come to the conclusion to relate these to globalizing the English language? Well, after an extensive array of studies and a battery of comparing this and comparing that, here's what they came up with. Now, while none of us will probably ever be responsible for the lives of 200 or 300 people on our airplane, all of us are responsible for our communication. And believe it or not, in some communication arenas, the sender is responsible for making sure the message gets heard. And in other communications, the receiver is responsible. In the American language, those nuances don't exist. We just tell you how it is. So I encourage each and every one of you to maybe look up PDI, learn more about the power distance index and how that's impacting your own ability to speak English amongst people who don't. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.